Max Thornton had never considered himself hero material. Standing at an unremarkable 5'9" with the physique of someone whose exercise routine consisted mainly of walking to the refrigerator, he was the definition of ordinary. His particular talent, if you could call it that, was an uncanny ability to learn languages. Not Earth languages. Anyone could learn those. Max specialized in extraterrestrial linguistics. "Welcome aboard the Celestial Concorde, Mr. Thornton." The voice belonged to a 7-foot-tall purple humanoid whose facial tentacles wiggled with each syllable. "I am Protocol Officer Vex. You are precisely 27 seconds late." Max adjusted his regulation-issue translator badge. "Sorry, got lost. Your ship is big. It is the standard size for a Class 4 diplomatic vessel." Vex's tentacles twitched disapprovingly. "Perhaps on Earth, this would be considered large. Follow me." As Max shuffled after the protocol officer, he took in the sights of the massive alien ship. Creatures of all shapes and sizes bustled past. Some floated, others slithered, a few seemed to teleport short distances. Just another day at the office for a Galactic Alliance translator. "The situation is tense," Vex continued, not bothering to look back. "The Kraxnari and Vexillian delegations have been at each other's throats or equivalent respiratory appendages for 3 days now. The automatic translation systems are adequate for basic communication, but they lack nuance. That's where you come in." Max nodded, suppressing a yawn. This was his 7th emergency diplomatic assignment this year. They always started the same way: tension, threats of interstellar war, and then someone realized a translation error had caused the whole mess. He'd fix it, everyone would laugh awkwardly, and Max would go home with another boring story no one at Earth bars wanted to hear. Here we are. The diplomatic gathering chamber. Vex's tentacles performed what might have been a flourish as a massive door slid open. The chamber beyond was a spectacle of alien architecture, with soaring ceilings and floating light orbs that changed color based on the ambient emotional energy of the room. Currently, they were a deep, angry red. Not a good sign. "Everyone, this is the human translator, Max Thornton," Vex announced to the assembled aliens. A dozen heads or head-like appendages turned to stare at Max. He'd never get used to being the center of attention in rooms full of beings who could probably eat him without much effort. "Just Max is fine," he mumbled, forcing a smile. "So, who said what to whom, and why is everyone ready to blow each other up over it?" Little did Max know that his casual question would be the first step on a journey that would end with him, drenched in multicolored bodily fluids, hailed as an interstellar hero, and questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. Ambassador Glorb of the Vexillian Empire was the first to approach Max. Standing at nearly 8 feet tall with glistening blue scales and 4 arms that seemed perpetually occupied with adjusting his elaborate ceremonial robes, Glorb exuded an air of self-importance that transcended species barriers. Human translator. Glorb boomed, his voice vibrating the liquid in Max's inner ear. "Perhaps you can explain why the Kraxnari commander called our sacred ancestral home planet, and I translate directly here, a festering pustule on the backside of the galaxy that should be lanced for the greater cosmic hygiene." Before Max could respond, a stocky reptilian being with armor plates and eyes that glowed like hot coals stomped over. This had to be Commander Zrek of the Kraxnari Defense Force. "That is not what I said," Zrek hissed, a forked tongue flicking out between razor-sharp teeth. "Your translation devices are deliberately mistranslating my words. I simply stated that your planet's orbital position creates a navigational hazard." Max held up his hands. "Okay, let's all take a breath, or whatever respiratory action is appropriate for your species." "I don't breathe, I photosynthesize," muttered a plant-like diplomat from the corner. Figure of speech, Max sighed. "Look, let me check the translation matrix." As Max pulled out his personal translator device, a significant upgrade from the Galactic Alliance standard issue, a small hovering creature with bioluminescent appendages floated up beside him. "We are you." "You must be the human everyone's talking about," the creature chirped in perfect English. "I'm Lumi, junior assistant to the diplomatic corps." Need help navigating this mess? God, yes, Max whispered. What's really going on here? Lumi's appendages flickered in what Max interpreted as amusement. The short version? The Kraxnari and Vexillians have been negotiating a shared defense pact against the Morgellian horde for months. Everything was going swimmingly until 3 days ago when Ambassador Glorb suddenly took offense to something in Commander Zrek's proposal. Max nodded, plugging his device into the ship's mainframe. And nobody thought to double-check the translations? That's bureaucracy for you, Lumi bobbed in the air. 17 different committees had to approve bringing in an external specialist. Meanwhile, we're all about to die if these two decide to start shooting. Max's device pinged as it completed its analysis. Well, I'll be damned. What is it? Lumi hovered closer. There's definitely been a mistranslation, but it's weird. Max frowned at his screen. See this subroutine here? It's specifically targeting diplomatic phrases from Kraxnari to Vexillian. Someone deliberately sabotaged it. Deliberate sabotage? Lumi's glow dimmed significantly. That's concerning. Max turned to the room of bickering aliens and cleared his throat. Nobody noticed. He tried again, louder. Still nothing. Mir. Lumi pulsed bright red and emitted a sound like 1,000 fingernails on a chalkboard. The room fell silent. Thanks, Max said, wincing. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary sentients of all species, I've found the problem. Your translation system has been tampered with. Commander Zrek never insulted the Vexillian homeworld. Ambassador Glorb's scales changed from blue to a skeptical purple. Prove it. May. Max displayed his findings on the room's holographic projector. See these code alterations? They're changing specific Kraxnari diplomatic phrases into Vexillian insults. But who would do such a thing? Commander Zrek demanded, tail lashing dangerously close to a table of delicate crystalline sculptures. That's the million-credit question, Max replied. For now, I'd suggest using my device as a neutral translator while I work on fixing your system. As Max began explaining the technical details, an aide rushed into the room. The alien, a tall, spindly being with too many joints, whispered urgently to Protocol Officer Vex, whose tentacles went rigid with alarm. Emergency protocol. Vex announced, all diplomats to the secure dining hall immediately. What's happening? Max asked Lumi as they were swept along in the exodus. No idea, Lumi flickered anxiously. But the secure dining hall is our safest location. It's reinforced against everything from energy weapons to quantum disruptions. Great, Max muttered. And here I thought this was going to be just another boring translation job. Little did he know that dinner would involve far more excitement and far more bodily fluids than he had bargained for. The secure dining hall of the Celestial Concord resembled a bizarre fusion of a 5-star restaurant and a military bunker. Crystal chandeliers hung above reinforced tables, while discrete weapon turrets were disguised as abstract art installations. The room's walls could apparently withstand a direct hit from a cruiser-class plasma cannon, which Max sincerely hoped wouldn't be tested during the appetizer course. Why exactly are we having dinner during an emergency? Max whispered to Lumi as they were seated at a table with representatives from 7 different species. Standard protocol, Lumi pulsed softly. Feeding time is sacred across most civilizations. Even potential attackers typically respect the dinner hour. Max nodded as though this made perfect sense and surveyed the elaborate place setting before him. He counted 16 different utensils, 3 of which were gently pulsating. Don't use the vibrating fork on your left, Lumi advised. That's actually a Zorkellian personal grooming tool. Terrible diplomatic incident last year, when a human ambassador used it on his salad. Noted, Max said, carefully pushing the vibrating implement aside. Any other utensils I should avoid sticking in my mouth? The spiral one with the blue tip is technically alive and considered a delicacy on Traxxas IV. They'd be honored if you ate it, but it'll give you hallucinations for about 12 hours. Before Max could respond, Ambassador Glorb clinked his glass, or what passed for a glass, it was actually a hollowed-out geode, for attention. Distinguished delegates, Glorb's voice boomed across the hall. Despite the security alert, protocol demands we continue with our scheduled diplomatic dinner. First course will be Aldebaran slug caviar, followed by... The ambassador's speech was cut short by a massive explosion that rocked the entire ship. The lights flickered, and emergency sirens began to wail. "So much for respecting the dinner hour," Max muttered as chaos erupted around him. Another explosion followed, closer this time. The security doors on the east side of the dining hall burst inward, and armed figures in unmarked black armor stormed the room. "Nobody move," the lead attacker shouted through a voice modulator. "This is a diplomatic intervention." Max, who had never been good at following directions in a crisis, immediately dove under the table, pulling Lumi down with him. "What the hell is happening?" he hissed. "I don't know." Lumi's bioluminescence had dimmed to a terrified flicker. "Those aren't Galactic Alliance security forces." Above them, diplomats scattered in panic. The attackers began herding important-looking aliens toward the exit, their weapons trained on anyone who resisted. One of the intruders grabbed a small, tentacled diplomat who had been sitting near Max. The diplomat, who Max recognized as the Exelbian ambassador, an extremely important figure in galactic politics, emitted a high-pitched squeal of distress. Without thinking, Max grabbed the nearest object, which happened to be the living spiral utensil, and hurled it at the attacker's helmet. The implement, apparently displeased at being thrown, unfurled into a mass of writhing tendrils that attached themselves to the attacker's faceplate. The armored figure screamed, dropped the Exelbian ambassador, and began clawing at their helmet. In the confusion, they stumbled backward and crashed into another attacker, who accidentally discharged their weapon into the ceiling. A decorative chandelier broke free and crashed down on 3 more intruders. "Run!" Max yelled to the Exelbian ambassador, who didn't need to be told twice. The dining hall had devolved into absolute bedlam. Food was flying, diplomats were hiding under tables or using their unique biological abilities to defend themselves. A Plutonian delegate had inflated to 3 times their normal size and was bouncing attackers off their rubbery hide. "Mr. Thornton." A sharp voice cut through the chaos. A tall, silver-skinned humanoid with cybernetic enhancements grabbed Max's arm. "I'm Captain Drell, head of security." "Did you just save Ambassador's cell using a spiral gastropod of Traxxas IV?" Max began. "Brilliant thinking." Captain Drell interrupted. "Most beings would have gone for a weapon, but you knew the gastropod's neural tendrils would confuse their helmet systems." "Yes." "That was definitely my plan," Max lied, watching as the attacker continued to flail around, the spiral utensil now glowing an ominous purple as it burrowed into the helmet systems. "We need to get the diplomats to the emergency council chamber," Drell said, already pulling Max toward a concealed door. "And you're coming too." "Me? Why?" "You just saved one of the most important diplomats in the galaxy. Plus, we need your translation skills. The universal translator is offline after that explosion." Max found himself shoved through the hidden door along with Lumi and a stream of disheveled diplomats, many still clutching their dinner napkins. Behind them, the sound of fighting continued in the dining hall. "What just happened back there?" Max asked Lumi as they hurried down a narrow corridor. "You just became important. That's what happened," Lumi pulsed excitedly. "And from the look on Captain Drell's face, you've also just been promoted from translator to vital diplomatic asset." "That's not in my job description," Max protested weakly. "Too late," Lumi bobbed cheerfully. "By the way, you have what appears to be Aldebaran slug caviar in your hair and something blue dripping down your shirt." Max looked down to see his formerly white dress shirt now stained with at least 3 different substances of questionable origin. "Great," he sighed. "I don't suppose diplomatic immunity covers dry cleaning bills." The emergency council chamber resembled what would happen if a United Nations meeting room had a baby with a nuclear bunker and then let a psychedelic artist decorate it. The circular table at the center accommodated beings of wildly different physiologies, from standard humanoid chairs to gravity-nullifying hover pads for gaseous entities. Max found himself thrust into a seat between Ambassador Glorb and the Commander Zrek, arguably the worst possible placement for someone trying to avoid being at the center of an interstellar incident. Order. We must have order. Protocol Officer Vex's tentacles were writhing with agitation. The Celestial Concord has been breached by unknown hostiles, and we need a response plan immediately. Before we begin, interrupted Captain Drell, I want to acknowledge the quick thinking of Translator Thornton, who saved Ambassador Cell using advanced non-lethal tactics. All eyes, optical sensors, and sensory nodes turned toward Max, who smiled weakly, still dabbing at the blue stain on his shirt. It was nothing, he mumbled. Just a, standard Earth defense technique. Earth defense technique? Commander Zrek's reptilian eyes narrowed with sudden interest. You mean humans routinely weaponize gastro-sentient utensils? Before Max could correct this misconception, Ambassador Cell floated forward, their tentacles waving in what Max hoped was gratitude rather than a prelude to digestion. The humans saved me using methods unknown to our security protocols, Cell burbled in their native language. This suggests humans possess tactical knowledge that could be valuable against our attackers. Max understood the Aselbian language enough to realize he was being wildly overcredited, but before he could translate accurately for the others, Lumi whispered urgently in his ear. Don't correct them. This is perfect. Perfect? They think I'm some kind of tactical genius. Max hissed back. Exactly. And right now we need all the confidence we can get. These diplomats are terrified. Looking around, Max realized Lumi was right. Despite their advanced technologies and imposing appearances, most of the aliens were displaying their species' equivalent of anxiety. Glorb's scales had dulled to a fearful gray, while Zrek's armored plates were clicking together in an agitated rhythm. Fine, Max sighed. But when this is over, I'm setting the record straight. Captain Drell slammed a cybernetic hand on the table. We need a strategy. Our security teams are engaging the intruders, but we're outnumbered. They seem to know our ship's layout perfectly. An inside job, Max mused, mostly to himself. The room fell silent. What did you say, Translator Thornton? Drell demanded. Put on the spot, Max's mind raced. I said it might be an inside job. The translation sabotage, the attack during dinner, someone knew exactly when and where to hit us. Preposterous. Ambassador Glorb's scales flushed an indignant orange. Are you suggesting one of us is a traitor? Not necessarily one of you, Max clarified, warming to his theory. But someone with access to both the translation systems and the ship's security protocols. A murmur ran through the assembled diplomats. The human speaks logically, Commander Zrek admitted grudgingly. This level of coordination requires inside information. But who would benefit from derailing these peace talks? Drell wondered aloud. That's the million-credit question. Max echoed his earlier words. Who profits from continued conflict between the Vexillians and the Kraxnari? As the diplomats began heated discussions, a junior aide scurried into the room and whispered something to Captain Drell. The security chief's cybernetic eye widened. The attackers are heading this way, Drell announced. We need to evacuate immediately. No, Max said, surprising himself with his own boldness. That's exactly what they want. They're hurting us. Explain, human, Zrek demanded. Max wasn't entirely sure where his confidence was coming from, but he pressed on. They attacked during dinner when everyone was gathered in one place. They're forcing us to move together as a group. That makes us an easier target. Then what do you suggest? Drell asked, cybernetic hand hovering over his weapon. We split up. Make it harder for them to get all the important diplomats at once. The human has a point, Glorb admitted reluctantly. Basic tactical sense. I'll go with the translator, Lumi volunteered immediately. My species can detect energy signatures. I might be able to sense the attackers before they find us." Before anyone could object, alarms blared again. The lights flickered ominously. "They've breached the outer security ring," Drell shouted. "Everyone follow the humans' plan. Split into groups and head for the emergency pods." As the diplomats scattered in organized chaos, Max found himself being pulled along by Lumi toward a maintenance corridor. "I can't believe they're actually listening to me," Max muttered. "You saved an ambassador and came up with a plausible theory about an inside job. In diplomatic circles, that practically makes you a legend," Lumi pulsed with what might have been amusement. "By tomorrow, they'll probably be saying you single-handedly fought off a dozen attackers while translating ancient Selbian poetry." "Great. No pressure then." As they hurried through the dimly lit corridor, Max couldn't help but notice a growing number of junior diplomatic staff were following them. One young Vexillian aide was looking at him with what could only be described as hero worship. "Are you really the human who threw the living utensil?" the aide asked breathlessly. "They say on your planet every eating implement is a potential weapon." "That's absolutely not true," Max tried to explain. "So modest." Another aide whispered reverently. "Just as the legends foretold." "What legends?" Max asked, bewildered. "There are no legends about humans and utensils," Lumi clarified. "But there might be by tomorrow if you keep this up." As their growing entourage navigated the maintenance corridors, Max realized with increasing dread that he had accidentally become the leader of what amounted to a diplomatic cult of personality. Worse, these aliens were looking to him, a guy whose greatest achievement to date was translating all 16 dialects of the Andromeda Nebula slug people for salvation. "Lumi," Max whispered urgently as they paused at a junction. "I think we need to find out who's really behind this attack before I get us all killed with my fake heroics." "Agreed. And I have a suspicion Lumi's bioluminescence dimmed to a conspiratorial glow. Did you notice how quickly Ambassador Glorb accepted your inside job theory? Almost as if he already knew it was true." Max's eyes widened. "You think Glorb is behind this?" "I think we should check the ship's logs from your translation console. If someone tampered with the translation matrix, there might be evidence." Max nodded. "Lead the way." As they redirected their growing band of followers toward the communications center, Max couldn't help but wonder how he'd gone from translating diplomatic niceties to leading an investigation into sabotage and terrorism, all while covered in alien food stains and what he sincerely hoped was just blue sauce on his pants. "When I applied to the Galactic Alliance Linguistic Corps," he muttered to himself, "the recruitment brochure definitely didn't mention any of this." The communications center of the Celestial Concord resembled what would happen if NASA Mission Control mated with a bioluminescent jellyfish. Screens and holographic displays floated in mid-air, while organic-looking cables snaked across the ceiling, pulsing with data transfers. "We need to be quick," Lumi warned as Max slid into the translator's console. "If Glorb is behind this, he'll have people looking for us." Max's fingers flew across the adaptive interface, which shifted its configuration to accommodate human hands. "I'm checking the access logs for the translation matrix there." The screen displayed a list of system accesses, most labeled with official Galactic Alliance protocols. But one entry stood out, an unauthorized access point originating from the Vexillian diplomatic quarters. "That doesn't necessarily mean it was Glorb himself," Max cautioned. "It could be someone on his staff, or someone making it look like the Vexillians," added a new voice. Max and Lumi spun around to find Commander Zrek standing in the doorway, reptilian eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Commander." Max tried not to sound guilty. "We were just, investigating the same thing I am," Zrek finished, stepping into the room. His massive tail knocked over a chair, which he ignored. "I've suspected sabotage from the beginning. The question is whether Glorb is working alone or with outside help." Lumi's glow intensified with excitement. "You believe us?" "I believe evidence," Zrek growled. "And the evidence suggests someone wants the Kraxnari and Vexillians at war. The only entities that would benefit from such a conflict are The Morgellian horde, Max finished, the pieces clicking into place. If you two are fighting each other, you can't form an alliance against them. Precisely. Zrek's scaly head bobbed in agreement, but we need proof before we accuse an ambassador of treason. Max turned back to the console. Let me try something. If I cross-reference the translation system access with the ship's security protocols, his voice trailed off as new data flooded the screen. There. The same access signature that modified the translator also disabled key security nodes during the attack. A slow clap echoed through the communications center. Very impressive, human. You're cleverer than your species' reputation suggests. Ambassador Glorb stood in the opposite doorway, flanked by two of the black armored attackers from the dining hall. His scales had shifted to a deep, menacing crimson. Ambassador Glorb, Max said, trying to keep his voice steady. Or should I say, Agent Glorb of the Morgellian Infiltration Corps. Glorb's face split into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. You've done your homework. Unfortunately, it won't help you now. Why, Glorb? Zrek demanded, his massive form tensing for combat. The Vexillians have no quarrel with the Morgellians. No quarrel yet, Glorb corrected. But our analysts predict that within 5 cycles your combined forces would launch a preemptive strike against Morgellian territory. We're simply adjusting the timeline to our advantage. By making us destroy each other first, Zrek snarled. Politics is rarely pretty. Glorb shrugged his 4 shoulders in sequence. Now, I'm afraid I'll need access to that console to complete my work. Not happening, Max said, stepping protectively in front of the terminal. Glorb sighed dramatically. I was hoping to avoid unnecessary violence. Take them. The armored figures raised their weapons. Max, operating on pure adrenaline and questionable judgment, grabbed the nearest object, a decorative crystalline sphere, and hurled it at the light fixture above the attackers. The sphere shattered the fixture, plunging that side of the room into darkness. Chaos erupted instantly. Zrek let out a battle roar and charged toward the attackers. Lumi shot upward, her bioluminescence flaring blindingly bright, disorienting everyone. Max dove behind the console as energy blasts scorched the air where he'd been standing. In the confusion, one of the attackers stumbled into a rack of equipment, which toppled onto them with a satisfying crash. The other fired wildly, missing Zrek, but hitting a control panel that began sparking dangerously. Glorb, meanwhile, had used his 4 arms to climb up a support column, attempting to reach an overhead maintenance crawlspace. Max spotted him and made a split-second decision that would later be described as either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. He lunged for Glorb's trailing ceremonial robe, yanking hard. The ambassador, caught off balance, tumbled down with a shriek of rage. They collided in mid-air, becoming a tangled mess of human limbs and Vexillian appendages that crashed to the floor in an undignified heap. Get off me, you primitive biped, Glorb hissed, one of his arms reaching for what looked suspiciously like a concealed weapon. Max, channeling his brief and inglorious career in college wrestling, managed to flip Glorb over and pin 2 of his 4 arms. Commander. A little help. Zrek, who had just finished incapacitating the second attacker by the simple expedient of throwing them bodily against a wall, lumbered over and placed one massive clawed foot on Glorb's chest. Don't move, traitor, the commander growled. Glorb's scales paled to a sickly yellow. This is a diplomatic outrage. I demand sanctuary under Section 7 of the Galactic Code. Funny thing about being a spy and saboteur, Max panted, still pinning Glorb's other arms. It tends to void diplomatic protections. A new alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship, this one higher pitched and more urgent than the previous warnings. What now? Max groaned. Lumi, who had been accessing a terminal during the fight, pulsed with alarm. Glorb activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. We have 10 minutes before the Celestial Concord becomes a very expensive fireworks display. Can you disable it? Zrek demanded. Not from here, Lumi's glow flickered anxiously. We need to get to the main bridge. Max hauled Glorb to his feet, keeping a firm grip on the ambassador's upper right arm. "Then that's where we're going. And you're coming with us to explain to everyone exactly what you've done." As they exited the communications center, Zrek dragging the unconscious attackers, Lumi lighting the way, and Max forcing a seething Glorb forward, they encountered the band of junior diplomats who had been following Max earlier. "The human has captured the traitor," one of them announced excitedly. "Just as he planned." "All part of the day's work," Max muttered sarcastically. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we need to stop this ship from exploding." The journey to the bridge became a bizarre procession. Word spread rapidly, and with each corridor they traversed, more relieved diplomats and staff joined their group. By the time they reached the main bridge, Max was leading what amounted to a small parade, with whispers of his heroic capture, growing more elaborate with each retelling. The bridge doors slid open to reveal Captain Drell and Protocol Officer Vex attempting to regain control of the ship's systems. "What in the seven nebulae is going on?" Drell demanded, then spotted Glorb in Max's grip. "Ambassador? You're responsible for this." "He's not just responsible," Max announced, shoving Glorb forward. "He's a Morgellian agent who's been trying to sabotage the Alliance talks from the beginning." The bridge erupted in gasps and the various alien equivalents of shocked murmuring. "The self-destruct can't be deactivated without the command override," Vex reported, tentacles writhing in distress. "We have less than 5 minutes." All eyes turned to Glorb, who smiled thinly. "I'll never tell you. The Morgellian cause is greater than any individual life." Max, running out of both patience and clever ideas, did the only thing he could think of. He bluffed. "Commander Zrek," he said loudly, "your species can consume Vexillian brain tissue and access their memories directly, correct?" Zrek, to his credit, didn't miss a beat. Indeed, though the process is messy and fatal. It was a complete fabrication, but Glorb's scales blanched to an almost translucent white. "You wouldn't dare," the ambassador hissed. "It would violate 17 different sections of the Galactic Code." "Funny thing about imminent death," Max replied, improvising wildly. "It tends to make people flexible on regulations." He nodded to Zrek. "Commander, how long does the brain-eating process take?" "Less time than we have until this ship explodes," Zrek growled, baring his considerable teeth in what could charitably be called a smile. Glorb's resolve visibly crumbled. "Fine. The override code is Morgellian Prime Sequence Alpha 3-7. Vex's tentacles flew across the control panel. Code accepted. Self-destruct aborted. The alarm ceased, replaced by a collective sigh of relief from everyone on the bridge. Security officers moved in to take custody of Glorb, who glared murderously at Max. "You were bluffing," the ambassador spat. "Kraxnari can't consume memories." Max shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But I'm pretty sure nobody was willing to test that theory with 2 minutes left on the self-destruct timer." As Glorb was led away, still protesting, Captain Drell approached Max with something like respect in his cybernetic eye. "Translator Thornton, it seems we owe you a debt of gratitude. Your quick thinking saved this ship and possibly prevented an interstellar war." Max glanced down at himself. His once pristine translator's uniform was now torn in multiple places, stained with at least 5 different substances, some of which appeared to be slowly digesting the fabric, and spattered with what he sincerely hoped was blue Vexillian blood rather than something more exotic. "Just doing my job," he replied wearily. "Though I think I'm going to need a significant dry cleaning allowance." 3 days later, Max stood uncomfortably in a fresh uniform as the assembled delegates of 17 species gathered in the Celestial Concord's Grand Ceremonial Hall. The ship, now safely docked at Galactic Alliance headquarters, had been scrubbed of all evidence of the attack, though Max swore he could still detect a faint smell of whatever had exploded in the communications center. "Distinguished delegates," Protocol Officer Vex announced, tentacles freshly oiled for the occasion, "we are gathered to honor the individual whose courage, quick thinking, and linguistic prowess averted a diplomatic catastrophe and saved countless lives." Max shifted awkwardly on the raised platform. Beside him, Lumi pulsed with barely contained excitement. "Stop fidgeting," she whispered. "This is your big moment." "I didn't actually do anything heroic," Max whispered back. "I threw a fork at someone and pulled on a robe. The rest was dumb luck and wild improvisation." "That's what all the best heroes say," Lumi countered. "Besides, you did figure out it was Glorb, after you pointed me in the right direction." "For the service to the Galactic Alliance," Vex continued, oblivious to their sidebar conversation, "we present Maxwell Thornton with the Order of the Celestial Harmony, the highest honor bestowed upon non-military personnel." Commander Zrek approached, carrying a medallion that glowed with its own internal light. The massive reptilian leaned down as he placed it around Max's neck. "Well played, human," he rumbled quietly. "That brain-eating bluff was inspired." "Thanks," Max mumbled. "Sorry for, making stuff up about your species." "Don't apologize. I'm considering spreading the rumor myself. Might come in handy during future negotiations." The ceremony continued with speeches from various diplomats, each adding their own embellishments to Max's supposed heroics. By the time Ambassador Sel took the podium, Max had apparently single-handedly designed a revolutionary translation algorithm, disarmed 3 plasma bombs with his bare hands, and negotiated peace between species that had been at war for centuries. The human known as Maxwell Thornton. Ambassador Sel burbled through a translator, has demonstrated that sometimes the greatest diplomatic tool is not a weapon or a treaty, but simply understanding one another. It is fitting that a translator became our savior, for is that not what we all seek? To be understood? Max managed a humble nod, though internally he was screaming, "I just pulled on a robe." After the ceremony, a reception was held where Max found himself surrounded by admirers of all species. Junior diplomats asked for his autograph on various appendages. A group of Kraxnari security officers wanted to know about Earth battle techniques. 2 publishing agents from the Sirius sector offered him exclusive contracts for his memoir, tentatively titled From Words to Warfare, A Translator's Tale. "Enjoying your fame?" Captain Drell appeared at his elbow, offering a glass of something blue and fizzing. "Is it always like this?" Max asked, accepting the drink cautiously. "Heroes are rare in bureaucracy," Drell replied with a metallic chuckle. "We tend to celebrate them excessively when they appear." "I'm not a hero," Max insisted. "I'm a translator who got lucky." "Perhaps," Drell conceded. "But consider this, when the universe needed someone to understand what was happening, to communicate across boundaries, and to bring truth to light, it was a translator who answered the call. There's a poetry to that, don't you think?" Before Max could respond, Galactic Alliance High Commissioner Thune approached, their gelatinous form undulating with official importance. "Translator Thornton," the commissioner's voice resonated from somewhere within their translucent body. "The Alliance has been discussing your future." "My future?" Max echoed nervously. "Indeed. We believe your unique approach to diplomacy could be valuable. We would like to offer you the position of Special Diplomatic Liaison for high-risk negotiations." Max blinked. "You want me to do this sort of thing regularly?" "On purpose." "With proper training and support, of course," Commissioner Thune wobbled affirmatively. "Your salary would be quadrupled, and you would have your own ship." "My own ship," Max repeated faintly. "Don't answer now," the commissioner advised, leaving a damp spot on the floor as they glided away. "Think about it." Lumi floated up, her glow slightly erratic from what Max suspected was the alien equivalent of champagne. "So? Are you going to take it?" Max looked around the reception hall. Commander Zrek was demonstrating a Kraxnari battle stance to fascinated junior diplomats. Ambassador Sel was deep in conversation with representatives from 3 previously hostile species. Throughout the room, beings who days earlier had been on the brink of war were now mingling, talking, understanding each other. "You know," Max said slowly, "when I joined the Translator Corps, I had this ridiculous idea that languages could change the universe." That understanding each other was the first step to solving any problem. And now? Lumi prompted. Now I realize I was right about languages being important, but wrong about how they'd be used. Max laughed softly. I thought I'd be translating poetry and trade agreements. Instead, I'm translating lies into truth and chaos into order while covered in various bodily fluids. So that's a yes? Max took a deep breath. That's a yes, but I have one condition. Name it. You come with me as my assistant. I need someone who can actually tell when I'm about to do something stupid. Lumi's bioluminescence brightened to almost blinding levels. Though I should warn you, my track record for preventing stupid actions is not great. That makes two of us, Max grinned, raising his glass in a toast. To understanding the universe, one miscommunication at a time. But as the celebration continued around them, Max couldn't help but wonder what new disasters awaited him in his new role. Whatever they were, he was reasonably confident they would involve confusion, danger, and ending up covered in something sticky. After all, in the grand tradition of accidental heroes throughout human history, Maxwell Thornton had stumbled upon the greatest secret of interstellar diplomacy. When all else fails, humans are uniquely gifted at making things up as they go along. It might not be the most dignified approach to saving the galaxy, but based on the results so far, it was surprisingly effective. And if future historians recorded that he had actually known what he was doing all along? Well, that was just one more mistranslation in a universe full of them.